Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, everyone. Welcome back to my YouTube channel and to another installment in the Copper and Wood Chute Mountain Railroad. If you watched the previous installment, you will have seen me colour all the rocks. This week's installment is going to be a slightly different change of pace. I'm going to work on the platforms for the two passenger depots, first Laconia and then Copper Junction. Now you may notice a little bit of progress that I have not presented yet. That's because I did this in the middle of another project. I started out working on the roads, but the spackle was rather thick and it was taking so long to dry that I just decided to get on with something else while I waited for it. Anyway, that's enough waffling about this week's video. So without further ado, let's head out into the workshop and enjoy the progress. While I'm waiting for the touch-up on the roads to dry, I've turned my attention to the Laconia depot. The client has sent me a cast hydrocoal kit for a small depot, which we're going to install at this point. We're going to have to modify it. At the moment it has a very short, straight timber platform. What I'm going to do is run that through the bandsaw to cut the edge off, and then I'm going to scratch put a new one from strip wood that fits the curve. And we've decided we're also going to inset it into the deck so that it's close to track level instead of being raised. So once I've cut the edge off and then worked out exactly where it's going to go, I will draw around it and then cut a hole in the plywood so we can set it half an inch lower. Here we have a rough mock-up. I've already run the base casting through the bandsaw, and I've mocked up the platform with masonite. It was a lot longer than that. We gradually cut it down a little bit at a time. I sent photographs of each step until the customer decided they liked the appearance. The idea is that all the essential doors from the passenger portion of the train and also the freight doors on the combine are comfortably on the platform, and then in the event that there is a boxcar with additional freight, if that needs to be accessed, then they will just back a truck up to the door. That is for the eastbound train. On the westbound train, the combine will be at the rear, meaning that the boxcar door will be way out here by the stream, and the locomotive will be afoul of this turnout, and the client decided that that's not a problem. The train density is low enough that they will rarely need the passing siding anyway. And we also have the option of making it interesting for the timetable, in that only the eastbound train will carry the extra boxcar. Anyway, that's enough about the design of the station. I am going to cut a hole in the plywood for the rest of the base to go in. I've already marked it. In fact, I marked it twice because the first time it was too close to the track. So I'm going to move everything out of the way so that I don't have any casualties. Get the skill saw out here and cut that hole. And then I'll work on the platform. Well, that is a hole cut and cleaned up. I've put some blocks of wood under at both ends to support the base. You just fix in the hole like that. It's a loose fit so that it doesn't bind. And I've also got a little bit of wiggle room for adjustment. And although I can easily lift it up now, it might be a little more difficult to get it from the top later, which is why I didn't put a solid base under there. There's plenty of room for the client to reach up, push it up with his fingers. I have two kinds of basswood to build the platform. There is the leftover strip from the bridge abutments, which will be the frame. Still got a few more to cut. And then I have some 3/32 sheet, which I will make the top from, scribed to make it look like individual planks. The next step is to scribe that detail, and I plan to build it in situ and then come back and stain it later. There is the height, and as we can see, at the moment the platform is a little bit on the low side. So I'll have to put some spaces in there to make it right. But that's easy to do later on when everything is complete. Well, there is the supporting frame glued. I left it weighted for a couple of hours while I prepped the decking material. Here it is, 3/32 basswood. I scribed it at 1/4 inch intervals to represent 12-inch planking. And I used a razor saw to do the scribing rather than a knife blade, because I want a groove that has some width rather than just a very narrow split. The other thing I did was lightly scribed it with an old hacksaw blade just to give it some grain. The next step is to cut this material to size. Well, that is everything cut to shape, and I was able to cut out all the marks that I told you about just now. I wasn't quite sure if 4 sections were going to be enough, but it was just. I made enough for 5 sections, so I have some spare. I ended up using the offcut as spacers to pack up the hydrocoal base. I've also used the razor saw to cut through the full thickness at the board ends, just to give more an impression of separate sticks. I'm reasonably happy with the way that's worked out, so I'm now going to get the train out of the way again and glue everything in place, making sure that I don't put enough glue to squeeze out anywhere that it's going to be seen, because that would affect the way it takes the stain. Well, that is that passenger platform glued together. I think while I'm working with strip wood, now is as good a time as any to move over here and build the crossing for the standard gauge. So let me get on with that and I'll be right back. Well, I've just gone in the house and left this glue to set up. And this is what we have. I think the customer will like that. Next thing I'm going to do is get everything stained, both this side and the grade crossing over the other side with the standard gauge. I'm going to stain both lots of woodwork at the same time, and then I'll continue from there. Yesterday I built the passenger platform for Laconia. Today I'm going to work on building one for the other town of Copper Junction. The client sent me the platform from his previous railroad, which, as you can see, is a lot narrower than this one needs to be. It had a smaller structure on it as well. This structure was built specifically for this railroad. Initially we weren't sure whether I was going to be able to salvage it and add to it. I don't think I can do that. The main problem is that it's built on a solid plank of 3/4 inch plywood, and I think it's going to be just about impossible to cut that and salvage the top. So I'm going to start again and build another one. The client said that was okay when he first dropped it off. He wasn't sure whether it would be useful or not. I'm going to see if I have strip wood in stock in my basement. I don't think I do, at least not in sufficient quantity. So I might end up scribing sheet basswood like I did over the other side. Well, I spoke to the customer this morning about the platform for the Copper Junction depot, and we decided the best way to proceed was to build just the base for it, and the client will then surface it himself using scale strip wood. He does enjoy scratch building structures, so that'll be an enjoyable 1 or 2 evening project for him. He certainly doesn't need to pay me my hourly rate to sit there and do something that he would enjoy doing himself. Because of the step in the benchwork, I had to thin down this side and put a strip under the other side to get it to sit level. I also found that there was a slight hump in the plywood at the joint. It wasn't enough to worry about with the track because I was able to correct it with the thickness of the glue. But when it came to the plywood base, there was no forgiveness whatsoever. But I was able to find some very thin strip wood, and I just put a small pad of that under each corner, and now there is no rocking whatsoever. Well, that's all for this week's video. Hope you enjoyed the presentation, found it useful or interesting, or both. There was one caveat at the end of the Laconia depot. I didn't make a video clip of it, but I came back out the following day after staining it, and it looked like crap. What had happened is the way the stain had taken to the basswood, there were some areas where the grain was clearly running across several planks together, and I just did not like the effect at all. It was obviously a single sheet instead of individual planks. But it's not a big deal because the platform actually ended up a little bit on the low side, so when the client does the strip wood for the Copper Junction depot, he will just add another layer of individual planks on the Laconia depot as well. Anyway, as I said earlier, that's all for this week. Hope to see you back next time. In the meantime, thanks for watching, and bye for now.